And it's a concept that I talk about, which is market to the one to reach the masses, right? And so a lot of times people say, well, Brad, I got to raise $20 million, or I want to raise 20 million, or my God, Brad, I got to raise $50 million. And I'm like, okay, let's do the math on this. If your average investor is going to give you 100, you're looking for 500 people. How many telephone calls? How many Zooms? How many networking events do you think you're going to have to go to find 500 people to cut you a check for $100,000?
Welcome to the Real Estate Pros Show, where we interview real estate investing professionals from coast to coast, as well as the service providers that serve the real estate investing industry. Our goal is simple: share what's working now to help you improve and scale your business to the next level and meet the pros that can help you get there. Real Estate Pros is powered by Investor Fuel, America's leader in helping real estate investors and professionals build the business you need to live the life you've always dreamed of. Let's start today's show. Property insurance for real estate investors doesn't have to be difficult, but it does need to be there to protect you when you need it. MyInvestorInsurance.com not only provides insurance at 15 to 30% cheaper than traditional agencies, it's built specifically for real estate investors like you. You can set up an account in about 2 minutes, get quotes on properties, turn on and turn off insurance for your fix and flip or rental properties in around 2 minutes without having to talk to anyone directly, all through our portal. There's no better way or faster way to make sure you've got the coverage you need to protect you, and no more lengthy policies either. Once you're set up, you're billed monthly and prorated by the day for however long your policy is active. It's powered by MSI, the third largest independent MGA, with 1.5 million customers and more than $1 billion in cumulative premiums written. Get set up today in about 2 minutes at myinvestorinsurance.com/fuel.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Real Estate Pros Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Bursey, and today in studio, we're joined by a titan of capital and the architect behind the Texas Blazar Group, Brad Blazar. Brad dominates the capital raising space. If you've ever felt like your portfolio is hitting a ceiling due to a lack of funding, today is your lucky day. Brad is a world-renowned expert in equity placement and literally has written the playbook on how to attract high net worth investors. He's the founder of the Blazar Group and the force behind Capital Connections. Brad has raised over $2 billion in his career and now mentors the next generation of elite closers. Please welcome, from the great state of Texas, the master of the raise, Brad Blazar.
Thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here. Boy, I'll tell you, with that introduction, I've got some big shoes to fill this afternoon.
Brad, it is a privilege to have you here.
I appreciate that. Well, thank you for hosting me, and I'm looking forward to adding as much value as I can to your audience today.
On today's show, we'll be talking about Brad's proven framework for raising capital, the core philosophies from his best-selling books, and how he coaches investors to master the high-stakes world of syndication. Brad, you've reached incredible heights in the world of capital and syndication, but every empire has a foundation. I'd love for you to take us back to the beginning. What was the initial spark or pivotal moment that launched your career in real estate?
Yeah. Well, it was really, interesting. I grew up in your traditional middle-class family. I had 3 siblings, both parents. My dad was an executive, and in his career, we had to move around quite a bit from job to job. My mom was a stay-at-home housewife for the most part until, my siblings got a little bit older, and then she went to work in Dallas as a real estate agent. But, as I was growing up, Scott, I saw the struggles, like so many families, not necessarily living paycheck to paycheck. And certainly we weren't poor, but it was just the struggle of, saving for kids' college educations, going on nice vacations and maybe not having to go as frequently as we would have liked. But in my life, I was very fortunate. Much like Robert Kiyosaki writes about in his book, I had a very wealthy, rich uncle. It was my Uncle Henry. And so my Uncle Henry was an orphan, never had more than a 6th grade education, but started with a partner, what ultimately grew to become one of the leaders in the women's fashion brand. And they successfully exited and, sold that company. And he came into tremendous wealth. And in doing so, had, multiple homes, had Rolls Royces that were driven for him by chauffeurs. And so I said, that's the life that I would like to live. And so my Uncle Henry, for me, kind of became, at a very young age, I won't say a mentor, but somebody that I had idolized.
Stop living on an island and join the #1 mastermind in America for professional real estate investors. Investor Fuel is a community of hundreds of the nation's top investors working together to build stronger businesses and better lives. In addition to the amazing community of real estate investors acting as a board of advisors for one another, Investor Fuel members have access to 100% funding on purchase and repairs for our members only, a health insurance program, and benefits and discounts that more than pays for the membership of most of our members, meaning it's actually costing you money to not be a member of Investor Fuel. If you're looking to scale your business and build a business that allows you to live the life of your dreams, please visit investorfuel.com today and book a call with our team.
And so when I went off to college, I initially pursued a degree in architecture. And I think that I did that because I was really pushed in a direction largely by, my parents. I think growing up, our parents tell us, Scott, what do we need to do? We need to go to college, get a good education, find a career path, work really, really hard, save, and then hopefully at some point in the future, retire. But when I went to school, I ended up getting sidetracked. I responded to an ad in a local newspaper, and I went to work in the oil and gas industry, basically raising capital at the age of 21. And so this CEO kind of took me under his wing. I guess he saw a little college, cocky, little confident kid. But what I learned very early in life was a skill that has stayed with me, all the way through, 40 plus years. And that was how to build trust, how to build relationships, and how to talk to investors, initially on the phone, and of course now also in person and via Zoom. But at the age of 21, 22, while I was going off to school studying, I would come in between classes, and at the end of the day, and I'd raise capital. And I was probably working no more than 12 to 15 hours a week back then, but I was making six figures. And so I said to myself, what in the world am I doing? Going to college to get a little piece of sheepskin that says, hey, college graduate, to go out in corporate America as a young architect to make 60,000, maybe if I'm lucky, 70, working a full 40-hour work week. I'm over here working part-time. I'm making six figures as a 20-year-old driving around town in a little Porsche, enjoying so I said, I'm just going to do this full time. And so unbeknownst to my parents, I kind of turned my back to school and I went to work full time in the oil and gas industry. And then with some savings, I started my own oil company at the age of 23. So I launched an oil company, never drilled a well, had no idea how to build a multi-billion-dollar business. But I remember what my Uncle Henry had taught me, and that was surround yourself with a team and people that are smarter than you, and they will guide you, and they will, of course, give you the answers you need to grow the platform. So that's exactly what I did. So from 23 all the way up till my mid 30s, I was basically the founder and building an oil and gas company until, as they say, the industry imploded. Oil prices plummeted in the late 80s, early 90s because OPEC had much more control in those days. And largely, the Tax Reform Act in the late 80s took away many of the incentives that were in place for investment capital. So over about a year and a half, I just made the decision to slowly just collapse the business. We consolidated. We never had to file for bankruptcy. We had no debt. But I realized that there were things beyond my control that were affecting the business's ability to grow and raise capital. So that's when I went back to school. And so I go back to college. I finish my degrees. I come out and literally, Scott, for 2 years, I was just very disillusioned, probably went through a depression because people wanted to hire me, but pay me a salary close to what I used to make in a good month. And I'm just like, this is not the life that I want to live. And so one day, as I was watching TV, it was actually Steve Harvey, this was many years ago, he was talking to his audience. And he said, I believe that everybody here in this audience today has what I call your something special. It's a hard skill or a primary talent. But if you can find out what that is, and most people never will, if it solves a real world problem and you can create content around that and deliver it to the world, it's wonderful for you and it's wonderful for the people that obviously it affects. And a few days later, it just hit me. I'm like, my God, my talent is I know how to raise millions of dollars. That's what allowed me to build my business. That's what allowed me to grow. I bet that is a skill that many companies would hire me to go to work for them. And so that's what I did for roughly 30 years. I was a hired capital raiser for some of the largest financial services firms in the world, literally raising hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, through not only accredited investors, but also, of course, registered investment advisory firms, family offices, broker dealers, sovereign wealth funds. And so that skill over many years has given me a special talent that very few people possess. And it's the ability to really mentor and advise people on the proper way to raise capital, which is something that most business owners obviously need, not just real estate, but in any endeavor in life. And so we've used that skill over the last few years, really in our platform, Capital Connections, to empower people and show them how to do it. Number one, compliance, because it's a regulated industry and the securities, but also just how to raise money from accredited investors or, open the network to family offices and, more serious amounts of capital, as well as, of course, raising capital myself for my own fund, because we currently invest as well.
Brad, something that stood out to me in regard to you at Capital Connections is that you aren't just teaching sales, you're teaching executive clarity. You help
Yeah,
people get
absolutely.
so clear on their why and on their how that investors find it impossible to say no. That's a rare skill set.
If you're looking for consistent, high-quality leads, look no further than Investor Machine. Investor Machine isn't just another agency, it's the most sophisticated, data-driven lead generation company on the planet for real estate investors, and serves the role of being not just a lead generator for your business, but a marketing partner that is helping you achieve your goals along the way. Go to investormachine.com to learn more and schedule a call with our team today.
Yeah. 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 Well, it's building trust, obviously, which is very important in the capital raising space. It's also understanding, what your story is. But I think you also hit it on the head. It's really having that why. I think that, so many people roll out of bed in the morning and they go to work. And I always ask people, why do you do what you do? And they tell me, well, it's because I have to. I've got a boss, and I got to go to a job. I got bills to pay. And I'm like, that's not your why. That's not your purpose. And I said, you've got to have something deeper inside you that's driving you, because there will be days that you don't want to go to work, but you still go. But once you get to a point kind of financially where you can start focusing on what I call the bigger picture, because I tell people, you're exchanging your time for money right now. Let's show you how to use other people's money to invest in assets. It could buy a small business, you could invest in real estate, but let's start creating some passive income to give you more choices in life. And once people get to a point where they're, making a couple thousand a month in passive income, it really just takes the pressure off them. They're like, wow, I don't need to go to work this week if I choose not to, because I've got $5,000 over here coming in from my rental properties or from the few businesses I own. And at that point, life becomes really fun now, because now it's not just about building the income, it's about building the legacy and scaling. And, when you understand the OPM game, you could literally build a financial fortress. I mean, many of the people that I consult, they have investment portfolios of hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're not public companies. It's just, some dude that's been raising money for the last 25 years that's invested in multifamily or some other sector in commercial real estate. And here he is, on top of his $400 million real estate empire. And if you know enough about, syndications, a lot of times these deals are done where the sponsor gets 30, 40% of that. Well, that's a big payday in somebody's future for just, understanding this principle that we're talking about here this afternoon.
Absolutely. Love it. Brad, what is the one thing most people get wrong when they ask for money?
The thing that I see the most common, which is the biggest mistake, which is very easy to solve for, is talking about your deal or the opportunity way too prematurely in the relationship. So many people have a time constraint. You've got a closing deadline, or you're just so excited about the deal that you approach people, kind of as if they're an ATM machine. And so you pitch. Well, when you pitch an opportunity to another person, the follow up to that, Scott, is something pretty similar to, oh, Scott, it sounds like an interesting opportunity. Can you send me some information so I can take a look at it? And so now we send them everything. and then they never end up investing with us. Well, what's happening at a very subconscious level is the other person saying, Scott, we just went out on one date. You're trying to get me to the altar. Let's slow down. So, what people need to realize is when we're raising capital, you really need to go through what I call a discovery process. Spend the first 2 or 3 meetings with that other person, just asking really good questions to get to know them. What's their risk tolerance? What's the best investment they've ever made? People love to talk about that. Are they trying to do something special with their money, like put children through school in a few years or see the money grow to maybe buy a second home as a vacation property? You can uncover the temptation. Then eventually, at the end of the second, as you're getting into the third call, people now know you. They understand your values. Now it's okay to pitch because now they're more inclined to move forward and actually open up their checkbook. So the first and the biggest mistake really that we typically see is just, talking too early about the opportunity and not slowing down that process.
Sure. That's a profound take, Brad. You can't play in the big game if you aren't a high level steward of other people's capital and trust. Give us
Absolutely.
the
You bet.
reality. Yeah, it's so important to build that trust. And thanks for elaborating on that. Give us the reality of how do you handle the word no when negotiating a big deal?
If you're a new or newer real estate investor looking to launch or grow your real estate investing business, please check out Investor Fuel Club. It's a coaching community, but unlike anything you've ever seen before. And you can actually partner with members of our mastermind from coast to coast on deals right in your market. There's no better opportunity to build a consistent business than to literally partner with pros to help you avoid costly mistakes, avoid the need for capital to do deals, and help you eliminate your fears as you're starting your business. Learn more about Investor Fuel Club at investorfuel.com/club.
No to me is not no. It's just I don't have enough information. And a lot of times, a objection or the hesitation that we see is really just apprehension. And very commonly is not even the real reason that somebody might give you for not moving forward. So I think one thing is trying to isolate an objection, if in fact there is an objection, and just basically, asking really good questions. But the other is understanding that from the potential investor framework, or of course, I've negotiated large transactions before, the no sometimes is the terms might not be amenable to the other party. Okay, well, let's sit here at the table and let's try to figure out what might be a win for you and a win for us so that we can effectively move forward in this relationship together. If they don't have enough information, sometimes it's not talking to me, it might be talking to other people that are on the team that have the information they might be looking for. But, the thing I tell capital raisers is you have to kind of adopt this mindset. And I learned this very early in my capital raising journey that the investment you're offering is not going to be for everybody. That's fine. Some people might be accredited, others may not. Other people just financially might not be liquid enough in the moment. And so you've got to adapt this mindset because if you come across to a potential investor from a place of desperation or in a manner where they sense that there's a bit of desperation coming through to them, you're never going to get capital raised. And so my philosophy is some will, some won't. So what? There's always somebody next to them that I can be talking to. And it's that very nonchalant, basically, attitude of, look, I've got an opportunity here that I really believe and I'd like to share it with you. But, if it's not for you, that's fine. I'll go share it with somebody else. And, it's that nonchalant attitude of I raise capital all the time. This is what I do. And, that served me and it served most of the people that we've helped really, really well because people want to invest in others that they perceive as successful. And if you're not chasing money, money will actually come to you. We actually become kind of a capital magnet when we adopt that philosophy and that attitude once people really know what we're doing.
Hey, I'm with you on that. Speaking of mindset, walk us through the biggest shift in your mindset that allowed you to go from raising thousands to millions?
Well, it wasn't really mindset. It was really something that happened very early in my capital raising career that was kind of what I call the big revelation, kind of that big aha moment. When I started raising capital, Scott, I started raising capital very similarly to probably what many people here that are your listeners are doing, picking up the phone, hosting events, and we were raising money from accredited investors, largely 25,000, 50,000. My God, if I got $100,000 investor, I was doing the happy dance. That was a really good day for us. But there was a gentleman that called me one day. He was actually a friend of mine. His name was John. And John was a very small registered investment advisor in Austin, Texas. And he said, I've been following you, and I think what you're doing would be very suitable for some of the clients whose money we manage here. And I said, oh, great. I didn't know what he did. And so we got together for lunch and I gave him the PPM and he asked a bunch of questions. And then eventually, he got on a call with my securities attorney just to make sure that we were dotting our I's and we were crossing our T's. And then he proposed something to me that was, why don't we co-host an event, Brad? I'll do the work. I'll get 12 to 20 of my better clients together. And, you come in and you speak a little bit about what you do. And, we'll serve some wine and some appetizers. And so we did that. And then after the event, again, he did all the work. So he went around to each couple or each family that was represented there and said, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Bursey, what did you think about Brad's presentation the other day? Oh, we loved it. I mean, my wife and I talked about it, John. We're going to do 200,000. Okay, great. And then he went over to the next couple. And so as he went around in 2.5 weeks, he sent me almost $3 million. And I'm sitting over here going, I'm busting my butt, making hundreds of calls to pick up checks for 25 and 50. And this 1 hour out of my week last week just sent me $3 million. So that was my aha moment. That was the shift or the crack the code. And so I got my little sales team together and I said, hey guys, we're going to get a list of other people like John. We're going to call these people. We're going to build relationships with these people. And if we do that, I think we can literally raise 3 to 5 times as much money over the next year compared to what we had raised in the prior 12 months. And certainly that's what happened. And so that was the big shift for me. And it's a concept that I talk about, which is market to the one to reach the masses, right? And so a lot of times people say, well, Brad, I got to raise $20 million or I want to raise 20 million or my God, Brad, I got to raise $50 million. And I'm like, okay, let's do the math on this. If your average investor is going to give you 100, you're looking for 500 people. How many telephone calls? How many Zooms? How many networking events do you think you're going to have to go to find 500 people to cut you a check for $100,000? Like that is hard work. You're going to get frustrated. You're probably going to give up. You're going to probably just say, this is impossible. I'm looking for just 4 to 6 guys where each guy can send me 5 to 10 million, just like my friend John did. You see the difference in strategies here? And when people see that, they're like, yeah, that makes sense. You see, now 50 million is much more attainable and it's much more realistic because now what you're doing is you're leveraging the relationships that other influencers have to tap into their networks. That is how you raise serious capital. That is how you can scale. And many of the companies that I've worked with now are raising literally hundreds of millions of dollars because all they've done is they've just gone deep in that direction, building out a platform of advisory relationships. And these other guys are raising all the capital for them now.
And that's how you work efficiently. Now,
Exactly.
I'm curious, what's the one piece of advice you wish you had knowing when you first were starting out?
To be real honest, I would have started sooner. I mean, I think that's what we all try to tell our younger version of ourselves. I've seen what raising capital can do for me and how it's affected a lot of the people that I've touched over the years. It's allowed me to do some really amazing, wonderful things in my life, donate money, be somewhat philanthropic and, give money away to charity. But it's really just getting started. And the one thing that I've learned being around some very ultra high net worth, very, very successful people is professionals do not listen to the noise. There are going to be days when you just don't want to do what you need to do. Professionals do it anyway. We just have this innate way to be so focused and so driven that we basically just don't get distracted by these things that come up in front of us. And there will always be things that try to pull you down or knock you down. You just got to get back up and you just got to keep moving forward. But the one thing that I would tell, your younger listeners and even those really that it might be a little bit more mature, is learn how to raise capital. Because in any business setting, you can only grow so much, you can only get so far bootstrapping it or using your own resources. And, Kiyosaki in his book says the key to legacy wealth is understanding the OPM game. Because once you learn how to attract and raise capital, now the sky's the limit. There's no ceiling on what you can build because, once you master retail investors, Brad Blazar can show you how to raise more millions from RIAs and family offices and build broker-dealer distribution. Imagine building distribution with broker-dealers where you get the registered reps that are affiliated with broker-dealers now also, raising capital for you. That's another venue that you can tap into. So, that's how billion-dollar real estate companies are built, Scott. It's not that they go to Wall Street. It's just that they have lots of investors. They have built a base and have built a community over many, many years. And a lot of these are still privately held companies. They're not publicly traded like some of the big real estate investment trusts. It's just that, this entrepreneur learned how to raise capital. He's been doing it for 20, 30 plus years, and he's been able to scale and grow, which is just an amazing, wonderful thing. And so the biggest thing that I would tell people is just get started early, or if you haven't, get started now and learn how to do this.
Absolutely. And you're at an elite level, Brad. But what are you most focused on solving or scaling next? How do you keep that momentum going at your level?
I'm just really driven. I'm just like the Energizer Bunny, and people that know me just keep basically saying, man, every time I look at social media, like you're in front of me, like, I don't know how you do it, Brad. You must have a whole team of people. And I just kind of smile and say, no, it's all me. I just wake up at 2 a.m. No, I have a whole team, of course, behind me. But, I think that when you look at what we built, and you look at the fact we are a global platform, we got many clients we consult in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, over in England, many other countries around the globe. So we definitely have expanded into a global platform here. We don't have people just here in the US. We have people that we work with all around the world. The thing for me really later this year in going forward is to really start speaking on more global stages. I'm speaking in Ottawa, Canada later this week. So I'm flying out there Wednesday and we'll be speaking in front of a few hundred entrepreneurs in Ottawa. But, to get over to the Middle East and speak in Dubai, or, one of my clients wants to bring me to Australia and have me speak in Sydney this year. So, it's getting out around the world as we get in front of more people, because what I've learned is I don't need more money. I just need to get in front of more people, because the people are the ones ultimately with the money. And it's the same thing in raising capital or doing deals. So many people are just so focused and just so myopic at what's in front of them that I think we've lost touch with. We got to look out in front of us. And, what really has amazed me is I've just witnessed how people have evolved and changed over the last 10 years is I think a lot of people have really lost the art of communication and just networking. I mean, I see this on airplanes. We're so focused on our little movie or we're reading a book. We're not even talking to the person to the right or to the left of us. And, if you're flying in first class a lot, which I tend to do, that person next to you could be your next potential investor, and you're not even opening the conversation with them. And to me, that's just a terrible thing. Like when I'm at a restaurant, I engage the people that might be at the table next to me. When I'm at Starbucks on a Saturday morning having a cappuccino, if I see someone pulling up in a Bentley or a pretty nice car, I'm going to ask them, hey, you just noticed your beautiful car. I'm a car guy. What do you do for a living here locally? And I strike up a conversation. Can I buy you a pastry? And before you know it, we're best buds and we're exchanging contact information. I really think that we've lost that. And I don't know if it's just, cell phones and just the fact that so many of us are just so akin to checking in with our phone every 10 or 15 minutes. But my God, folks, start talking to people. That's how you raise money and that's how you network.
Absolutely. That's big. Now, Brad, this question's been on my mind since we booked you. You've raised over $2 billion and taught thousands how to command a room. When an operator finally gets that seat at the table with a high net worth investor, what is your best advice in regards to shifting their mindset from solicitor asking you for a favor to a partner offering a massive opportunity?
What I have learned about the ultra wealthy and just talking to a lot of very, very wealthy people, is they really get turned off when people approach them talking about their deals or their need for capital. I always talk to people and I ask about their family. I ask about them, what they're passionate about. And I say, what are you working on now, Scott, that you need some help with? How can I add some value to what you're doing at this point in your life? And if there's any way I can, and usually there is, they're very indebted. It might be a few days later, it might be a week or two later. But, if I can think of someone in my network that might be able to open the door or help that other person, or if I actually can contribute and help them, they're so appreciative because now you've shown that I care about you. I want to add value to you. And then at some point, what naturally happens? The conversation turns to, well, what can I now do to help you, Brad? Oh, funny you should ask. But I've learned that these very wealthy people are very, very relationship driven. They're looking for long term relationships. And what you want to do with successful people is really add value to them, network with them, open doors for them, because they become so appreciative that then it's almost like this sense of obligation that they want to help you, which they do. Now, they may not invest with you. That's okay. But what I have found is that rich, wealthy people know a whole lot of other rich, wealthy people, right? Richard Branson's not over there at Necker Island hanging around with bums under the palm trees. He's out hobnobbing with celebrities and movie stars and other rich, wealthy people. So that's really the best advice is that always approach people and say, what are you passionate about? What are you working on? Is there something that you're frustrated with or struggling with that I might be able to help you with? And to the extent you can, that's how you lead with affluent family offices and other very, very successful entrepreneurs.
And that's dynamite advice. Now, I know a lot of our audience is either early in their journey or looking to level up, Brad. And I think they'd benefit from hearing this from you. When it comes to building relationships and growing your network, what's made the biggest difference for you?
I think it gets back to what we had just talked about. It's, trying to add value. It's really just kind of stepping back. And for me, having a purpose or a mission in my life and really knowing why I get out of bed and show up and do what I do every day. It's not for me. It's really for others. And I heard a story a number of years ago that I very commonly share from stage, and it really brings audiences to tears because it is such an emotional story. But it allowed me in the moment to really say, wow, like that is why I do what I do. And it was a gentleman by the name of Matt that, runs three companies that do about 100 million a year in gross revenues. And he shared a story where one year during the holiday season, his sister-in-law came over with her husband, and it was a couple of days before Christmas. And so, the men went upstairs to watch a football game, and the ladies were in the kitchen. And as his brother-in-law kind of started dozing off on the couch next to him, as the game progressed in the third quarter, he leapt out of the couch like he'd seen a ghost, very startled. And Matt's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then Matt said there was like this expression on his face where what he said next hit me like a ton of bricks. He dropped his head and he said, "Can I share something personal with you?" And of course, Matt's like, "Yeah, I mean, you're family. You're my brother-in-law." I said, "I was just diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, Matt. I just want to let you know it's pretty bad." And so Matt said, "Well, what does Susie say?" Of course, that's the wife. He hadn't even told her yet. He's like, "You haven't told your wife you got terminal cancer? Like, what's wrong with you?" And then he said, my brother-in-law started to cry. He said, "Matt, I didn't plan for this. I'm 48. I have no will. We don't have life insurance. I'm so worried about my kids." So obviously Matt said, "Well, it's time to man up. We got to go downstairs and we got to have a little family get together here," which of course they did. And so as you can imagine, hugging and kissing and not knowing what the future was. And he said it wasn't even 6 months, folks. 3 months later, they said their goodbyes and they buried him. Well, the next day, now Matt's wife, of course, comes down. Her name was Cookie, and she's been crying. And he said, "What's wrong, honey?" He said, "I'm thinking about my sister, Matt. They're not privileged people like you and me. She's going to have to sell the house. May have to go back to work. She's got 3 little boys to feed." And Matt just said, "It's going to be really, really tough, but God always has a way to work miracles." And so that day he called his sister-in-law and he said, "We'd like to invite you and the boys over this weekend and just do some barbecuing. Kids can play in the back in the pool," which they did. And at the end of dinner, everybody, I opened up the lapel to my sports coat and I handed her a Hallmark gift card. And she opened it and she broke down in tears and she said, "I cannot take this from you." He said, "Oh, yes, you can. And more importantly, you will." Inside there, folks, was a check for $3 million made out to her to be the insurance policy her family never had. And then he raised his hand to the audience he was in front of and said, "Who here in the audience wants to be just like rich Uncle Ned?" And every voice, I mean, we all leapt out of our seats. And then, of course, to the ladies, "Who here in the audience wants to be like my wife, rich Uncle Cookie?" And every woman, he said, "Folks, that's your purpose. You want to make so much money that you become the foundation and bedrock, not for you, but it's for those that you care about." And so in my life, it's my siblings. It's my close friends. If I can help them at a moment of need financially, I step in. And that's what drives me. It's that desire, just like Matt, to know that you can positively influence and affect other people. My Uncle Henry's name is on the side of a building in New York, the Kalman Research Center at the school there for, $10 million donation he made. He didn't have to do that, but he did because his money had an impact and an influence on something that he was obviously passionate about. So that's really kind of the why. And that's what I tell people. If you find that why that gets you going every single day, you'll keep getting back up. You'll keep moving forward and you'll keep just basically focused on a bigger thing so that once you reach the level you're trying to hit, I guarantee there's always going to be another level. And once you hit that, there's always going to be another level.
One last question. You've literally written the blueprints for attracting and closing high net worth investors. Out of everything you've published, what is the one truth about human psychology or money that you hope stays with your readers long after they've closed that first big deal?
I think the hardest thing in something that I have learned is always be transparent and be honest and be truthful. We unfortunately, as capital raisers, have to deal with the fact that we are in a very regulated industry, obviously the securities industry. So you have, the regulatory environment that is there to prevent fraud and misrepresentation. But let's face it, sometimes in life, just bad things happen to good people. I get it. The best underwriting, the best of intentions could somehow just go astray if something happens to an asset or to a business. I mean, COVID affected literally people globally around the world. Did we plan for that? No. But I think what happens is a lot of people are just really apprehensive to have those tough conversations with investors, try to sweep it under the rug or, you sugarcoat things a little bit. Best policy is just be open and be transparent because that's how you build trust. And I remember, my grandfather telling me that the one thing that we carry with us throughout our life that if we tarnish it really affects us very poorly is our good name, our reputation. Once you get the reputation of being dishonest or not being truthful or, only telling half of the truth, you just make your life that much more difficult and challenging. So I think that the biggest thing, especially in this space, is just be transparent, be truthful, and always talk about the risks. I tell my students the best way to raise capital after you've shared the opportunity is to pause and say, "Scott, I'd also be real remiss if I didn't discuss and walk you through some of the potential risks. You're smart enough to know that every investment has risks, Scott. So let me just share with you what some of those are." And now I'm responding to some of the risks on how we would handle them in the event they happened. But that just builds even more trust and gives that person more of a reason to want to invest with me. It's because I'm being fully transparent. I'm saying, here's the good. And here's the bad. We don't expect the bad, but if it happens, we're prepared. And I just want to let you know that we've dealt with some of these challenges before. You bet.
Thank you for dropping
Absolutely.
those gems, Brad. That is exactly the kind of
Absolutely.
conviction our audience needs to win at the capital game. All right, before we wrap, if someone wanted to reach out, connect with you, maybe collaborate or learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Well, naturally through our contact page on our website, just, bradblazar.com. It's spelled B-L-A-Z like zebra, A-R. You can find me all on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram. Just send me a DM or a personal message and my team or me will personally get back to you, typically within 24 to 48 hours. That would certainly be the best way to reach out to us to inquire about our services or our upcoming events, things that we do throughout the year. And we'd welcome all of you to reach out. We're here to help. We're here to show you how to grow. And more importantly, we're here to help you uncover, how to raise capital, do it the right way, do it with some of the strategies that we've talked about today, opening up our network so that if you're raising capital now, perhaps you can raise even more. Or if you're just a beginner, you can have the blueprint and, of course, move forward and be successful. But that would be the easiest way. Is just, send me a DM through social media or reach out through our website.
Brad, this has been an absolute masterclass on executive clarity and what's required to play in the big leagues. For our listeners,
I
the
appreciate it.
takeaway is very clear. Brad has illustrated this fantastically. The capital is out there, but it follows the person who has the conviction and the standard to lead.
Absolutely.
Brad, thank you for being so generous with your wisdom and for joining us on the show today.
You're very welcome, Scott. It's been a pleasure.
And for everyone tuning in, if you found value in today's episode, do us a favor. Take a screenshot of the show, post it to your stories, and tag both me and Brad with your number one takeaway. We'd love to see what resonated with you most. Until next time, keep your standards high and your vision clear. We'll see you on the next episode, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for today's Real Estate Pros Show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing for your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. If you're interested in joining us as a guest of this show, please visit investorfuel.com/pros to apply. You can also check the show notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and much more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next show.